Okay, I was just in the bath, and I just had this kind of thought, and I thought it might be, well, it's not worth it, but I might just try and get it down into words. You'll see what in a minute. It's one of those thoughts that to a stupid person might sound like you're intelligent, but to anyone else you sound like an idiot. Probably because I am an idiot, but I'm going to put it out there anyway because there's no one else here. So the thought was, I was kind of just imagining this futuristic society or alternate reality society where they've replaced language with mathematics. So they speak or they converse entirely in mathematics. So that there's very little room for ambiguity and stuff like that, and you can see when something's gone wrong, and you've got a clear way of working out why it is and why certain arguments don't add up, or literally, and how it'd be easier to track logic. Anyway, but then I kind of realised that the more I thought about it, I tried to think about how this language would actually function. And I started thinking about, like, you'd have to ascribe either numbers or, well, you probably just use algebra for things. But anyway, obviously I'm not smart enough to fucking work out something like that. But then I started to realise that language is already kind of doing that. I mean, chair would be an algebra for chair, would be the algebraic notation for chair, right? Or it could be, anyway. And then I started to realise that all the other words we use are kind of doing the job already. And then I thought, well, hang on, is language just maths already, right? And I think what I came to the conclusion of in the end is that language is mathematics, right? But it's kind of like, so when we use language to help us understand the mathematics, so without language we wouldn't be able to have worked out any of the maths. What I actually think language is kind of like an extrapolation of maths, but kind of taking it into a higher not literally, it's not literally from a higher dimension or anything, obviously, but like I think a technique in maths is to use higher dimensions to allow you to kind of use the system to observe the system without interfering with the system, right? So maths. So when someone writes a maths proof, they use actual language to show the progression of, to fill the gaps, right? But the language has to be mathematically sound. So it's a kind of maths, but so that you can talk about the maths that you are trying to discuss, you use the language, which is actually maths as well. But it's like not extrapolated, not extracted, no, it's just separate from, what's the word? Distended, no. Excluded, no. Anyway, so yeah, that was rubbish, and I see all these things, man. When I have them in my head, I fucking say them so well. I just forget things that I can't. And then maybe I just need to come up with a new way of talking, because the way I try to do it is I try to recall the exact way I thought about it in my head before, and I just can't do that. I just remember fragments, and the important bits get lost. So yeah, language is it's maths already, and it's never mind. Give me a second. Just another thought that I've kind of remembered a fragment of was that when you have like philosophical not contradictions, but debates and arguments about what's right and wrong, things like that, and some people claim the conclusions don't match the arguments and stuff like that. It's just the maths not being followed through completely, or mistakes being made along the way, just like you would have in a mathematical proof, or when you have a conjecture that's not solved. That's exactly the same. It's a language game. And if we were to convert it all back into the maths that we actually speak of as maths, then it would obviously be ridiculously complex, and that's kind of what the language maths allows us to do. Allows us to simplify it a bit, so that we can use the limited capacity, intellectual intelligence capacity that we have to actually work with mathematical ideas that we can't quite put into the mathematical notation yet. So yeah, if you want to have a conversation about something, then something you'd have to have a really I'm not sure what the correct word here would be, formula, notation, and then not algorithm, but anyway, I'm just going to leave it here because this is it's just not getting it out at all, and I've got stuff in my ear, water in my ear. Anyway, if I come up with anything else I'll add to it, probably not. Can't quite work out how much of this I've already done, where I got up to, or where I left off, and all that. Anyway, I'll just read them. There's only about 3. People often say maths is a language. I think that language is a maths. Obviously, not very good at the language there, because language is maths. What? Anyway, maybe the idea of language being mathematics supports the idea that we should never lie or always tell the truth. We should never lie, or another way of phrasing that, we should always tell the truth. When you're telling anything, of course, you don't have to tell the truth if you don't have anything to say. Some may object that if language was mathematics, lying wouldn't work. We'd all be able to see that the lie didn't add up. But it's important to realise that we are not necessarily agents with perfect understanding of how the maths actually works at every step. If we were, we'd be trying to make a mathematical model. That's the reason the language was useful in the first place. Obviously, this is all conjecture. That's the reason the language was useful in the first place. It allows us to make use of mathematics that we are not yet able to explain explicitly. And so the danger of lying would be to taint the growing knowledge of how the underlying mathematics works. Think of it, and this is a hard analogy to relate to given the seeming absurdity of something so blatant given the seeming absurdity of something so blatant fooling anyone. But say someone said 4 times 4 equals 16, and that 25 times 12 equals 300, and that 216 times 12 equals 3,312. No, that final one was wrong, by the way. Now it's possible for people to be mistaken. Of course, but still damaging. Now it's possible for people to be mistaken, of course, but still damaging. So I'm saying that they lied about that final one, but obviously it could have been a mistake anyway. Hence, it's also advisable for people to aim to be mistaken as little as they can be. So that's what Sam always goes on about. He likes to be wrong for as little time as possible. So supposedly he'd correct his views if they were countered by more reasonable ones. It's also helpful to recognise that a lie is often made much more effective when either obscured by, embedded in, or surrounded by truths. Also consider that should the right questions be asked, the lie should unravel. In the example, asking what 3,312 divided by 12 equals could reveal the truth, or alternatively, doing your own research and realising you don't come to the same conclusion. One way to counter a lie is to ask the right questions, I guess is what I'm getting at there. Just to make my position against my own construal of the optimistic interpretation of your existence, I said something about you had to have been worthy of making it against 3.8 billion years of adversity. The counterpoint would be, well, the same can be said for worms. Right. I'm going to end it there. I managed to only get it down to 3 minutes. Pretty happy with that. I'm also going to have to buttress this with the one that I recorded when I got out of the bath or something the other day, I think. So yeah, hopefully it's... Oh yeah, it's all about the stupid maths language bullshit. God, oh Lord. What a depressing episode of Deranged Thoughts.